Okay. So yes, welcome to the second class of your Mains Mentorship Program. Okay. Now today we have 3 or 4 major topics in GS3 which we'll focus on. Okay. Now before jumping into that topic, again, uh, for all Mains Mentorship classes, the first slide that I give is always this slide. That is the common mistakes made by students while you're preparing for mains. Okay, this is a very common slide which I give every year, but still after the mains preparation or as and when the mains exam is approaching, students tend to commit the same mistake. Okay, so again, I'm telling you beforehand so that you do not commit the same mistake in the next 2.5 months, right? So what are these common mistakes? Just we'll glance through it fast, okay? And then we'll directly jump into the topic. Okay. Now, first is the lack of prioritization. Now, please remember if you're writing mains for the first time, ensure that you create a separate small notebook which ensures that you have certain very unique points. Okay. That is, if you want to stand out differently with respect to other mains counterparts, please ensure that the first 4 5 points that you have in every mains answer, right, it stands or it is unique. It's not common with what others are writing. Okay, so for that, whenever you see something very unique, even in our classes, so those 2 3 points, extra points that are there, you should separately note it down. Okay, and you should ensure that you prioritize it when you're writing it in your mains answer. Okay, if you write a very generalized answer, you will get a very generalized score only. Okay, you'll not stand to gain. So that is the reason if you stand to get proper ranks in your mains, definitely you should focus on this aspect from now itself. It is not something that you can gain along the line. Okay, so first, from now itself, you have 80 days, start along the same line. Okay, the second aspect is the health aspect. Already, I think everyone is down slowly with COVID and all. So please ensure you do not have the luxury of time so that you can fall ill, waste 10 days of your time. Okay, so the health aspect is very important. Okay, the third one is self doubt. Now, here, this is specifically for those who are writing mains for the first time because you will be bombarded by so much content, so much optional content would be there that there would be a point of time in this preparation that you will think ki maybe this time is not my best attempt, maybe I'll try it next time, I will give my best attempt next time. Whenever that self doubt creeps in, your preparation starts to fall from there. Okay, so please ensure whenever there is a self doubt, take a day break. It is fine that you lose one day rather than you losing your entire attempt. Okay, so every student who is writing mains will go through the self doubt phase. Okay, especially if your optional is not done, ethics is not done, that will happen. Okay, so it's better recollect your recollect your thoughts accordingly. You prioritize. Okay, now neglecting optional, ethics and essay, this I think already we have discussed. Without focusing on these three, you do not stand to gain a chance in your final list. Okay, you should score well in your optional, ethics and essay. So prioritize accordingly. Now, this one is very important for the first timers. That is, as and when, because you have cleared prelims for the first time, it does happen that you are putting in a lot of effort at the very first instance. Okay, you're studying 15 16 hours, but you have to ensure that this goes on till the next 3 months. Okay, so do not be overzealous. Ensure that the same intensity is carried throughout the entire mains length. Okay, not writing full length test. This is another major mistake that is done by students. That is not able to realize beforehand that you are not able to complete the paper also on time. Okay, so once you write full length test, then only you will be able to understand this. Okay, so first content segregation, content by heart, and then the third aspect is full length test, which you must definitely do. Otherwise, you will be leaving questions in your exam on, right? Lack of self-analysis, this is something, yeah, there could be self and a lack of self-analysis could be there, or more of self-analysis could also be there, which would lead to ever-evolving strategy. Both are wrong. Okay, once you have created a strategy which is working, which seems to be working, stick to it for the entire main preparation. Okay. Now, a heightened sense of pride, especially for the students who are clearing prelims for the first time. Okay. The race is not over. You still have to clear mains. You still have to clear interview. Okay. Just by clearing prelims, nothing, you have achieved nothing actually. Okay. You have just achieved a window of opportunity to be in the final list. So ensure ki yes, you avail this opportunity properly. Okay. And finally, lack of revision. Okay. Now this is most important aspect. Next 80 days, every day allocate some time frame beforehand for revision. No matter what happens, fix a time frame, 7 to 8, 8 to 9, whichever is suitable for you. That time is for revision, no matter what happens. Okay, because without revision you will not recollect points, you will not be able to write fast in your mains. Simple. Okay, so revision is the key. Make acronyms for the same and do this exercise. Okay, so focus on prioritization, health, and lack of revision. This aspect, these three, if you focus on, you should stand to gain in your mains preparation. I hope this is clear. Okay, this is a common theme, but every year still every student after 2 months they do mention कि sir ethics नहीं हुआ, optional नहीं हुआ. Okay, so that's why I'm telling you beforehand. Okay, chalo. If all of this is clear to you, now we come to the syllabus at hand. Okay, so today we have basically four themes that we are trying to cover. Right, inclusive growth, Indian economy, we have the infrastructure topic and the investment models topic, right? Now, when we talk about inclusive growth, this is the most easy topic that you can expect or you can predict also. You can prepare also while you go before the GS3 paper. Okay. Now, inclusive growth is a topic which every year, almost every year, except 1 or 2 years, for the last 10 years, it has been asked constantly. Okay. So for inclusive growth topic, you should have your notes prepared beforehand while you go for GS3, before you are going for writing GS3. Okay. So how is the topic asked in inclusive growth? It is always a component of inclusive growth and basically a subpart. It's asked as a subpart. Okay. So we'll focus on that aspect. So see here, when we talk about PYQs, it is, see, in 2024, the question asked was the public expenditure on social services. Okay. Then its impact on, or how is it able to achieve the components of inclusive growth. Okay. Similarly, the year 2020, the question asked was intra-generational and intergenerational issues of equity and the problems of inclusive growth. How is it that you plan to achieve inclusive growth? Okay. So the same topic could be inclusive growth and sustainability, inclusive growth achieved through financial inclusion. So here it was Jan Dhan Yojana, right? So different, it could either be a scheme or it could be a way of a government measure that is taken so as to achieve the component of inclusive growth. That is the question. Okay, so how is that government measure trying to achieve the components of inclusive growth? That is what you're supposed to prepare. Okay, so in all these years, the same question has been repeated. The static content would again and again, you will write the same component again. Okay, now there is another aspect of a question that has been asked, that is inclusive growth even possible under the current form of capitalism, that is market economy? Okay, so this has been asked in 2022, 2014. Okay, or what are the features of inclusive growth and what are the challenges which are associated with inclusive growth? Okay, so to cover this topic, inclusive growth, what you will do is basically you will have some basic content prepared beforehand. Okay, so that content I will provide in the slides after the class. So the basic content, that is what form, what is inclusive growth, what are the basic components of it, what are the basic challenges associated with it. Okay, but then the current affairs aspect of it is what we have tried to cover in today's class. Okay, so what is the current affairs aspect of it? That is middle income trap. Okay, so here we have World Bank, which has mentioned that India, as well as many developing economies across the globe, they may fall prey to this middle income trap. Okay, so here the question can be directly, yes, what is this middle income trap that you have this institutions are talking about, and how are they a challenge for inclusive growth? Okay, so the two components of this question can be framed in such a manner. Okay, so here when we talk about middle income trap, yes, go through it. Okay, or if a static question of inclusive growth is asked, you can use this example, okay, in your conclusion or your introduction. Okay, so that is World Development Report is there, which is authored by World Bank, which has mentioned this phenomena of middle income trap. Okay, now why is it so? Because it is saying when a country reaches a certain level of middle income, it is not able to compete with high income countries because it does not have the requisite innovation. At the same time, it is also not able to compete with low income countries. Okay, because in manufacturing sector. So in both the ways, that is the reason why it is trapped in middle income. Okay, so World Bank has clearly given a stat which mentions that economies which reach a level of per capita which is nearly 11% of that of US, they are basically facing a stagnation in their incomes. Okay, so over the last 34 years, only 34 middle income economies have transitioned from this trap. Okay, and they have been able to do so because, specifically because they were part of the European Union. So most of the countries who have been able to move away from this middle income trap, they were part of the European Union. Okay, so the other countries, they have found it basically hard, right? So what is the theme that World Bank has mentioned about? It is mentioned about something known as 3I approach. Okay, so what should India focus on? It should focus on investment, it should focus on innovation, it should focus on infusion. Okay, so the 3I approach that the country has to focus on. Okay, so it must invest and it must ensure that there is innovation, especially local innovation, and the infusion of technology, global technology in its sectors. Okay, so these is the 3I approach that has been mentioned by the World Bank. Okay, now you tell me, why is it, do you think that India may fall into this middle income trap? Why do you think, what might be the reasons? We'll brainstorm and then we'll go through the content. Okay, so what might be the reason? Why do you think India may fall into this middle income trap? What might be the reasons? You can chat, you can post it in the message. Okay, like per capita income is very low. Yes, lack of R&D is there, investment is not there. Rise of middle class, that may not be an issue. Stagnant manufacturing sector, very good. Inequality is there. Yes. More employees in agriculture, fine. Anything else? Any unique point? Yes, woman, definitely. Geopolitics may be there. Less expenditure could be there. FDA outflows is sign of a mature economy, so may not be the actual case. MSME, yes. Climate change could be very good point, Preksha. Yes, climate change could be a major issue. That could be a reason. Okay. Taxation may not, you may have to explain skill. Okay. Consumption based economy, very good. Fine. Great. Good points. And if you want to ensure that India escapes this middle income trap, what would you suggest? What measures should the government of India take so as to ensure that it does not fall into this trap? We have one point we have already seen, 3I approach, right? That is there. Focus on investment, innovation, infusion. Yes. Any other unique point? R&D, ठीक है. Again, we are focusing on prioritization. Remember, okay? The best point at the top. Three are very good. Circular economy could be there. Yes. Deregulation, very good. Upskilling, yes. Investment, take a promoting millets. Okay. Okay. All right. So the points are good. Again, uh, coming back to the first point I mentioned, we will learn this practice. Okay. That is our first two, 3 points have to be very unique. Okay. So that we will focus on. Okay. So let's see the content and we'll again revise. Okay. So yes, what are the current challenges that India faces? Okay, when we talk about middle income trap. Okay, so when we see throughout history, the countries who have moved out of this middle income trap, they were able to do so because they had a favorable export climate. Okay, but now India faces a rising protectionism, because of which, yes, there is a slowing world export growth also. So even if we focus on the manufacturing, the service sectors, but the issue is the global climate is not favorable. Okay, so that is a major challenge that you should definitely mention. Okay. The third point is premature deindustrialization. That is again the without even developing our manufacturing sector to its fullest, we have transitioned to service. Right. So that is a major challenge that India faces, which it is not able to accommodate so many jobs. Right. So three major points. First is slowing world export growth. So that is a major point. Second is trend of protectionism, rising protectionism is there. Premature deindustrialization. This is something that RBI has mentioned. The major challenge that has been faced by India. Okay. Now, then the fourth point is over concentration of economic power. That is, yes, there is rising influence of billionaires, because of which they are crowding out private investment. Okay. And then another very unique point that you can mention, that is reversal in structural transformation. That is now post pandemic, what we have observed is earlier the labor was moving away from agriculture to low construction sectors, right? But now after post pandemic, labor is moving back to agriculture and low productivity sectors. So this is a major challenge that India has to tackle. Okay, so this is a very unique point. Definitely you can mention. Okay, apart from this, yes, stagnant wages are there and low consumption demand is also there. Okay, so the other points that you have mentioned, all of those points you can add to this also. I hope this is very clear. Okay. So major challenge, export is not favorable. World exports is not favorable. Rising protectionism is there. Premature deindustrialization is there. Reversal in structural transformation is there. And the wages are basically stagnant. Okay. So your wage growth is nearly 5% and your inflation is nearly 7% according to government stats. Okay. Now, apart from this, whenever we talk about the Indian economy, there are two. You have to remember few diagrams which you can use. You can definitely use in your answers. Okay. So one of those is this one. Okay. So whenever a question is asked on manufacturing, whenever a question is asked on service, whenever a question is asked on Indian economy, whenever a question is asked on unemployment, whenever a question is asked on skilling, in all of these topics, you can use the same diagram. Okay. That is when we talk about our labor force participation rate, it is very much less than the global average. Okay, so India's labor force participation rate is nearly 55, 57%, whereas global average is 65. Okay, now you can use these examples also to highlight your point. It will give you, the examiner will be forced to give you marks, right? So Vietnam, it is 78, China, it is 76. Okay. Now, if you want to write something negative regarding the same, when you talk about the manufacturing or the sector, so here the former governor has clearly mentioned that India has missed the labor intensive manufacturing hub bus. Okay. So now India should actually focus on high technology service jobs. Okay. So these statements you can actually mention in your conclusion part. Okay. Now, when you talk about the countries who have surpassed this middle income trap, so there are two countries which stands separately. They have been mentioned. That is South Korea and Chile. Okay. Now, what was the commonality between them? There was high state intervention. Okay, in both these countries, the state intervention was very high, and the state tried to ensure wherever there was something positive, okay, export driven activities were there, they were highly promoted. At the same time, the firms which did not do well, they were allowed to fail. This is something that India has to learn. Okay, so for those sectors, it entertained private sectors, especially where there was export driven growth model. Okay, so successful companies, they were rewarded with access to new technologies, whereas firms which did not perform well, they were allowed to fail. Okay, so this is something that India can learn from. Same happened with Chile also. Okay, now what can India do so as to ensure that it does not fall into the trap of middle income, right? So first is ensure there is free factor mobility. Okay, so when we talk about, as we have mentioned, it is European countries who have been able to, most of the European countries have moved successfully from middle income countries to large income, right? So when they have been able to do it solely because there was free factor mobility of capital as well as labor, right? So you can mention this aspect. And the second aspect is the principal scientific advisor of India recently mentioned that India needs to be a product nation now. It should design and it should manufacture components for its local industries, not serve for the globe. Okay, so India is proficient in designing, but it has less than 10% of global chip design facilities. Okay, so the principal scientific advisor has clearly mentioned, not simply related to this, but also in other manufacturing scale also, we need to transition to high technology intensive sectors. Okay, now focus on deep tech startups, global capability centers, and sunrise industries also. Okay, that also will help you in transitioning to higher income levels. Okay, now neutral performance based state support. So as you can give the example of South Korea, where the institutions which performed well, they were given access to new technologies, whereas the ones which did not perform, they were allowed to fail. Fine. Now, if you have been asked what India can do at a state level, now till here it is what it can do for the private industries. But at the governance level, at the state level, here clearly the economic survey mentions that we need to increase the state capacity. Okay, so what the economic survey is mentioning is, till now India has been this the governance has been basically limited to colonial structures. They are focusing only on core services, providing health and education. But now India needs to be pro. It has to ensure that it is pro governance. Okay, it has to focus on other sectors also. Okay, at the same time, the second aspect here is low level of empowerment at local level. That is, the local government expenditure in India is nearly 3%. Whereas when you talk about in United States and in China, it is more than 25, that is 27 and 51%. So this also you can mention through the chart, right? So in India, it is nearly 3%, whereas when you talk about US, it is 25, 27 percentage. And when you talk about China, it is 51 percentage. That is local government expenditure. Okay. Now, Parliament also needs to work more. That is, our average sitting days is nearly 50 to 70 days, whereas when we compare it with others, it is nearly, they are just double or triple, 140 to 170 sitting days. Okay. Our regulatory institutions, they have to be strengthened, and our judiciary also has to be strengthened. Okay. So these are certain ways in which you can ensure that there is, at an institutional level, there is a requisite support so as to ensure that there is, India does not fall into the middle income trap. Okay, so please go through this aspect. I hope this is very clear what we have discussed. Fine. All right. So now if this is clear, we will revise it very fast. Okay. So middle income trap, I think everyone knows what it is. Okay, we will not be, that is, there exists a point of time where we stagnate. Okay, the incomes does not rise and the growth is also reducing. Okay, now what are the challenges faced by India? We have discussed, but you tell me now the unique points that you can remember. One is 3I approach, right? What are the other challenges that India may face going forward? Premature deindustrialization could be there, yes. What else? Protectionism is there. Our export growth is very less, yes. Slowing. Post-pandemic shift is there, very good. We are seeing a reversal of structural transformation. Okay. Even over centralization of economic power is there, very good. And the wages are stagnant. Okay. Now, when you talk about the diagram, what would you say? Labor force participation rate of India is? Yes, 55, 57. Okay. And you can give the other examples also. Okay. Vietnam, China. Yes, you use it accordingly. Okay. Now, what can India do? International examples, I think we already know. South Korea is there and Chile is there. Okay. Now, what would be the way forward? What can Indian government do here? There are certain unique points that you should mention. That is, India has to transition to what? High technology sectors, that is, product nation. Okay. India has to transition to what? Product nation. Apart from this, what are the other points that you can recollect? You have to focus on free factor mobility. Very good. Okay. So the current issues of regionalism and all, right? Language issue and all, that will hinder India's growth story. Okay. So we need to ensure free factor mobility. Okay. Yes. Global capability centers, they have to be improved. Okay. Deep tech startups have to be promoted. Sunrise industries have to be promoted. Okay. And I think in the governance level also you can remember, right? On the governance level, it would be, okay, state capacity has to be improved. Local capacity has to be improved through local expenditure. Okay. Parliament has to function, judiciary as well as regulatory institutions also, they have to function accordingly. Okay. So remember the start also accordingly. Okay. So local government expenditure, it is 3%, whereas for US it is 27, for China it is 51. Fine. So I think broadly you have understood. Okay. Now here the inclusive growth, the static content part of it, I'll attach in the slides. You can go through it after the class. Okay. So this is a very important topic. Please go through it. Fine. Okay. So inclusive growth is done. Now we come to the next topic, that is Indian economy. So in Indian economy already, I think Vikas sir has mentioned, he has covered GST and a broad topics he has covered, right? But if you go through this topic, you will understand the topic is basically current affairs. Okay, matlab the major issue that is going to affect the Indian economy. That is what the question is framed in such a manner. So it's not a static topic, it's a current affairs based topic. Okay, so GST I think already covered because it has been asked multiple times. We have covered it. Okay, but apart from this, when we talk about the major issue that is going to affect Indian economy, it is the issue of global debt, that is rising global debt. Okay, so this is something that is a major issue that is currently happening, that is currently evolving. Even recently, you might have heard of yeah, the credit rating agency, which has downgraded US also. Okay, it has downgraded USA simply because they are not particularly sure if they will be able to service their debt. right? So you have to understand the context in which it is asked and its impact on the Indian economy at large. Okay, so when we talk about exactly, so when we talk about rising global debt, how do you think it would impact Indian economy? What do you think would be the impact on India? First of all, what do you think is the reason for global debt? You should know, right? What is the reason that we are seeing rising levels of global debt? Our borrowings have increased dramatically. What might be the reason? Inefficient government spending could be there. Population increase would not be a valid point, Pallavi. Okay, I'm talking about prioritization. Okay, so in the prioritization scale, you have to ensure, you have to be very careful what you're writing the first three, 4 points. Okay, over leveraged financial instruments can be there, deficit financing, very good, tariff what could be there, freebies could be there. Okay, so these may be the reasons. Okay, now how do you think it would impact Indian economy? Inflation, okay, can be there. Reduced investor confidence, okay, can happen. Capital flight, very good points, Salish. Okay, capital flight might happen, crowding out might happen, taxation could increase. Yes, that's a possibility. Exchange rate volatility could be there. Very good, Surya. Okay, so let's see those points. Okay, let's cover this topic and we'll see any unique points that you see. Yes, remember it separately, and you are supposed to again prioritize when you're writing your main answers, right? Chalo. So when we talk about global debt, first of all, we should know what is global debt, right? So currently, the global debt is estimated to be $300 trillion, surpassing pre-pandemic levels. Okay. So here, what is global debt? So what are the key components you should know? First is, yes, government debt. Then there is the corporate debt. Then there is the household debt. All three increasing, right? Now, when we talk about the national debt here, again, with respect to India, yes, our public debt is in excess of 80% of India's GDP. Okay, so our target in FRBM was 60%, but right now we are in excess of 80%. Now, here you should remember this diagram. Okay, here if you can remember this, that would be much better. That is, yes, in 2002 it is 82%. Then by 2010 we dropped it till 66 percentage. We were in line to go till 60%, right? Then the COVID strike, there is 88%, then 82%. Okay, so if these things you can remember, it would be much, it would enhance your answer, right? So the general government debt as a percentage of GDP, right? So currently it is in excess of 80%. Now, what are the reasons? So whatever you have mentioned, yes, that are correct. Okay, so the first one is pandemic related spending. Okay, the massive stimulus packages that were offered, so that definitely increased your global debt, especially in US. Okay, now the second important unique point that you can mention is currency depreciation in emerging markets. Okay, now because of currency depreciation, what is happening is when we talk about your debt repayment or your interest cycles, they are basically increasing. Okay, so currency depreciation in emerging markets, that is a major challenge. Okay, the third one is the transition that is happening in the fight against climate change. So this is also increasing your global debt. Okay, then there could be geopolitical conflict could be there, and the low interest rate environment post the recession, because of which there was increased borrowing. Okay, so all of these points you can mention. Okay, the rest of the points that you mentioned, unsustainable subsidies, transfers, freebies, all of this you can mention. Okay, but the first 2 3 points have to be very unique. Okay, you mention those points accordingly. Okay, so pandemic may be an issue, currency depreciation could be there, geopolitical conflict could be there, the transition cost, energy transition cost could be there. So these may be reasons for rising global debt. Okay. Now, recently there was an international debt report which World Bank basically mentioned, where they have mentioned that for low and middle income countries, it has there is rising debt servicing cost. Okay. Now, there are two reasons for the same. One is they are trying to again finance their debt levels or their interest payments through further debt. Okay, so that is increasing their debt servicing. And the second aspect here is because of currency depreciation, again, the levels of debt that is, it is basically increasing. Okay, so this has diverted resources from essential sectors. Okay, so here rising debt servicing cost is there and rising borrowing cost is there. Okay, interest rates are also rising because of which the issue is there. Okay, so there is severe financial strain on the countries, right? Now, what would be the impact on India? So yes, if there are countries which are trying to take in much more or trying to borrow more so as to service their interest, what will happen? It will lead to higher borrowing cost. Okay, so there is rising global interest rate, so India faces higher borrowing cost. Okay, similarly there could be capital outflows as one of the student mentioned. Okay, exchange rate volatility could be there, which could increase your import bill, and there could be slowdown in global growth also. So what we have observed is especially low income countries, they have been trying to finance their debt through exports. So whatever finance they are getting through exports, they are trying to service their debts. Okay, so that is another major challenge that we have observed, World Bank has observed. Okay, so India's exports may face reduced global demand, that can be an issue. Now, a risk of financial stability could be there, because of which FPI outflows may be there. Commodity price fluctuations could be there. Okay, volatile crude oil prices. And finally, because there is you're servicing your debt, there could be impact on your social expenditure. Okay, your social welfare schemes might get affected. Okay, so when you talk about impact on India, the first one is interest rate may increase, second is capital outflows may happen, third is exchange rate volatility may increase, which will increase your import bill. Okay, the fourth one is slowdown in global growth, fifth one is FPI outflows could be there, commodity price fluctuations could be there, and finally the social sector, okay, may be affected. So these are broad impacts that India can go through with respect to global debt. Fine. Now, what would be the way forward? Way forward, yes, here strengthening fiscal discipline. Now, please remember the main students who have got marks, they have got marks only for their examples. Okay, so please ensure that you inculcate this habit of writing examples after each and every point. Okay, so that is very, very important. Those are the ones for we have seen students score 448 in GS alone. Okay, so those students, when we have analyzed their copies, what has uh, what has differentiated their copies from other copies is basically the use of examples. Okay, so try to use these examples to substantiate your point. Okay, so here when you talk about strengthening fiscal discipline, I think every student will write that. But then the example, yes, IMF fiscal monitor is there, which is talking about anchoring this. Okay, restoring debt sustainability. Okay, promoting counter cyclical budgeting. Okay, example UNECTAD. Okay, broadening tax base. So here you have OECD, that is global minimum tax. It has mentioned about OECD's inclusive framework on BEPS, right? So you're using your prelims knowledge itself here. Okay, for example, coordinated global action. So G20 common framework, we already know, right? So using them for debt relief, right? Rationalizing subsidies, use of technology in public financial management. and performance-based grants. Okay, so these are certain ways in which you can ensure that India does not fall into this global debt, right? So this aspect of it, please go through it. Strengthening fiscal discipline, promoting counter-cyclical fiscal policies, broadening your tax base, prioritizing growth enhancing expenditure, rationalizing subsidy, coordinated global action, using of technology, and finally, performance-based grants, especially in the context of transitioning to green. Okay, so this aspect of it, please go through it, right? So again, revising global debt currently, what is the stat that you will remember? When we talk about global debt, again, three components, right? Three components you will mention and 300 trillion. Okay, that is your global debt currently. What is the reason for the global debt? Pandemic related spending is there. Then what is the next one? Currency depreciation, especially in the, so climate financing could be there, yes. And any other unique point that you remember? Take a geopolitical conflicts, all of this you can mention. Okay. Yes. Finally, the impact on India. The impact on India would be growth stagnation, take a capital outflows. Okay, use these words, capital outflows. Okay, commodity price fluctuation. Use those words. The examiner will definitely give you marks, right? Exchange rate volatility. Yes. Rising global interest rates. Yes. Okay. And finally, we are talking about what? Social impact, right? The social expenditure would reduce, right? So that is there. And way forward, performance based grant, yes. Okay, fiscal monitor is there. Counter cyclical budgets, budgeting you have to go through, yes. Basically, whenever there is surplus, you should not go for excessive borrowing. That is the basic concept. Broadening of the tax base. There also BEPS, OECD. Okay, the example of OECD, inclusive framework on BEPS. Yes. Encourage MSME and all fine. Okay. Rationalization of subsidies. So I think you have got a broad idea. Okay, so these points you can mention. Fine. Chalo. If this is clear, we come to the third topic. The third topic is government budgeting. Okay. Now, when we talk about government budgeting, when you see the questions that are asked in the last 10 years, they are all asked basically from the topic what has been there in your union budget. Okay, so when you talk about capital budget, potential GDP, when you talk about long term capital gain tax, again, this has been, there might be some measure that has been taken in the union budget, and that is what the question is asking about. What are the recent measures taken in the union budget in 2017-18 or 2018-19 with respect to long term capital gain tax? Okay, so we are basically focusing on the budget. Okay, and any specific uh, measures that have been taken by the government in the government in the union budget, that is our concern. Okay, so gender budgeting is a separate topic which I think Vikas sir has already taken. What today we will focus on is the objectives of union budget. Okay, so this year we are expecting a question on this one on government budgeting, especially when we talk about what? Viksit Bharat. Okay, this term that is there, it's very, very important. Okay, and you should clearly know what Viksit Bharat entails. Okay, what is the government of India trying to say when it says Viksit Bharat? Okay, in the previous class, what sir mentioned was what can be done to achieve Viksit Bharat. That is not the point here. The point here is what are the six components of Viksit Bharat according to the government of India. Okay, so this you should definitely remember. Why you should remember, if even if this question is not asked, if you're writing any question on education, on skilling, on healthcare, on women, you can use this as your conclusion. Okay. As for example, if you are talking about skilling, as entailed in Viksit Bharat, that is 100% skill labor, we have to ensure. Okay, you can write measures. Okay. So please ensure कि you know what Viksit Bharat entails. So zero poverty, 100% good quality education, access to healthcare, 100% skilled labor, 70% women in economic activities, and even farmers. Right? Now, if a question is asked, what are the government measures exactly that government has proposed to ensure or to achieve the components of Viksit Bharat? Okay, so what would be your answer? What are the measures that have been proposed in the union budget to achieve the goals of Viksit Bharat? Okay, so if such a question is asked, please ensure you do not write random answers. Okay, you focus exactly on what the union budget has mentioned. The union budget specifically talks about four engines of development to achieve the goal of Viksit Bharat. You will write your answer also accordingly. Okay, so your agriculture is your first engine of development. MSME is your second engine of development. MSME already has been asked multiple times. The measures, exactly government measures regarding MSME. Okay, so it has been asked already multiple times. Same thing you have to remember. Okay, this time, but what we are thinking is either the question will be broadly asked or it would focus specifically on investment. Okay, so these two definitely you should know. Okay, so four engines of development: agriculture, MSME, investment, and exports. Fine. Now, when we talk about agriculture, at least the ones which have been marked in red, you should remember. Okay, you should by heart, you should remember, you should reproduce it as it is. Okay, so here first is Pradhan Mantri Dhan, this one Krishi Yojana. Okay, so here basically what are we talking about? We are talking about developing certain agricultural districts which have not seen agricultural development as of yet, or their agricultural productivity is very less, and their credit, agricultural credit is also, formal credit is also very less. Okay, so this should be your first scheme that the union budget has mentioned. Okay, the second one is building rural prosperity and resilience, focusing specifically on underemployment in agriculture. Okay, the third one is mission for Atmanirbharta in pulses. Fourth one is Makhana board. Fifth one is national mission on high yielding seeds. Okay, so when we talk about engines of development, the government measure includes these five at least. Okay, with respect to agriculture. Fine. With respect to MSME, what you will mention is the first one is reclassification of the criteria for MSMEs, especially with respect to investment and turnover limits. This diagram you have to remember, draw it out. Okay. Similarly, with respect to credit cards, also 5 lakh limit is there. Now, apart from this, there are three more important schemes here. Fund of funds for startups. That is, a 10,000 crore fund has been set up to promote startups here. There is also a scheme for promoting first time entrepreneurs, especially with loans up to 2 crores. Okay. And finally, National Manufacturing Mission for small, medium, and large industries. Okay, so now we have discussed two engines of development. Agriculture was there. So there the focus was on developing 100 agri districts. Okay, the second was talking about underemployment in agriculture. Okay, the third one was talking about pulses. Okay, the fourth one was talking about Makhana board. The fifth one was talking about high yielding seeds. Okay, so these are five engines of development. The second one, MSME. In MSME, you will write reclassification of MSME. The second one is credit card. The third one is trying to ensure that startups are provided with fund of funds. Okay. The fourth one is for first time entrepreneurs, you're providing some scheme. Okay. And the fifth one is national manufacturing mission. These 5 points you will simply write. Okay. Now, after this, the third engine of development is investment. Now, this is why this one we are saying focus on this. Okay. So when we talk about investment, there are three sub areas that the government has mentioned. That is investment in people, investment in economy, investment in innovation. Okay. So when we talk about investment in people, yes, adult tinkering labs you can mention. Okay, you can talk about Center of Excellence in AI. Okay, Saksham Anganwadi is there, Poshan is there. All of these are government measures which you have, which the government has taken. That is investing in people. Okay, investing in innovation. Yes, it is deep tech fund of funds. Okay, the government is also promoting 10,000 fellowships from IITs and IASCs for technological research. Okay, there is also government is also setting up gene banks for crop germplasm. Okay, so these are certain points that you should note. There is also one scheme that is Gyan Bharatam mission, which is talking about digitizing our manuscript heritage. Okay, now when we talk about investing in economy, we are talking about asset monetization, supporting states with interest-free loans. The third one is Urban Challenge Fund. So you should mention the same term, Urban Challenge Fund, okay, announced with respect to tackling the issues of smart cities. Okay. The fourth one is Nuclear Energy Mission for Viksit Bharat. Now, Udan already asked in 2024. So again, it will not be asked, right? But you should know the broad parameters. Okay, so Maritime Development Fund is there, mining sector reforms is there, Jal Jeevan Mission is there. Okay, so when we talk about investment, there is investment in people, investment in economy, investment in innovation. Fine. Now, apart from this, finally we come to the fourth engine, that is export. So in export, again, remember, focus is on global capability centers. You want to promote global capability centers in tier 2 cities. Similarly, Bharat Trade Net, if you can remember, that is for international trade. It will help in trade documentation. Okay, so export promotion mission is also there. Okay, so these are basically four engines that the government is focusing on. Fine. All right, so let's revise so that you recollect at least some facts that we discussed today, right? So whenever the question is asked on how would the government try to achieve the goals of Viksit Bharat? So with respect to agriculture, what will be your points? What do you remember? Agri districts, yes. Okay, national mission on high yielding seeds. Then yes, that is there. Okay. Makhana board, yes, definitely you should mention. And Atmanirbharta. Yes, very good. Okay. After that, you write other points. It is fine. Okay. There are other Kisan credit card. All of it is there. You can mention. Fine. The next one is MSME. In MSME, what were the broad points that you will remember? Reclassification, right? Fund of funds is there for startups. Credit is there, right? For micro enterprises is there, 5 lakh limit is there. National manufacturing mission in continuance of Make in India. Okay, in continuance of Make in India, we have launched National Manufacturing Mission. Very good. Okay. Yes. Jai Kisan. Okay, fine. Then we have investment. First time entrepreneurs also scheme is there. Yes. Investment. Here in investment, you will mention three broad parameters. Okay. Yes, investment in people, innovation, and economy. Okay. Accordingly, you will write different 2, 3 points. Okay. Just the subheading, if it is there, you will get marks in your mains. That subheading has to be there. Fine. So Center for Excellence, you will write yes. What other points can you recollect broadly, if you remember? For states also, there is Atal Tinkering Lab is there, Anganwadi is there, Poshan is there. States you are supporting with interest-free loan, yes. Saksham is there, PM Swanidhi is there. What else? Urban Challenge Fund is there. Okay, that you have set up a 1 lakh crore. Okay, for cities, right? Asset monetization is there. Very good. Okay, where you are trying to bring in 10 lakh crores or something. Okay, PM Fellowship is there. Maritime Development is there. Very good. Okay, Gene Bank is there. Great. Gyan Bharatam mission is there. Yes. And nuclear energy is there. Okay, very good. Okay, nuclear energy mission for Viksit Bharat is there. Right. Now, with respect to exports, what are the points? Bharat Trade Net is there. Finally, Global Capability Center is there. And one more is there, that is Export Promotion Mission. Okay, exactly. So these are 4 engines of development. Please go through them. Okay, this much is uh, enough. Fine. Okay. Now, apart from this, when we talk about the in the union budget, there are 4, 5 points separately that have been mentioned with respect to financial sector reforms, which we'll be covering again in detail. Okay. So one of the important ones is FDI limit has been increased. It has been raised from 74 to 100%. Okay, the others you can go through it. Okay, that is public sector bank. They can develop Gramin credit score framework to help self-help group members. Okay, so these points you can mention in your conclusion also, right? Self-help group topic is already there, so you can mention this as your conclusion. Similarly, investment friendliness index of states to promote cooperative federalism. Okay, so these are things that have been mentioned in union budget itself, right? Now, apart from this, in the innovation, there is another which is very, very important, that is economic survey. Okay, this has been taken directly from economic survey. That is, what are the initiatives taken by the government to encourage IP protection? Intellectual property is already a topic in your GS3. In 2024, also a question was asked regarding intellectual property. So here, when economic survey specifically mentions about the measures that they have taken, you should specifically write these points exact as it is, right? So when we talk about economic survey this year, they have talked about certain government initiative. The first one is expedited patent examination for startups, MSMEs, women, and all of inventors and all, right? They have simplified patent procedures also. That is, they have reduced the timeline, okay, from 48 months to 31 months. Okay, they have simplified trademark procedures. That is, they have reduced from 74 days to 8 days basically. Okay, fee reduction has happened. They have digitalized their system, and there is startup property protection scheme is there, and setup of technology transfer organization so as to support innovators and entrepreneurs. Okay, so this is why we are covering this specifically given in economic survey, talking about government measures which has encouraged IP protection. Okay, so again, repeating, that is, first is talking about patent examination. We have expedited patent examination. Second is we have simplified these procedures. Third is even trademark, we have reduced the number of days required. Fee, we have reduced. We have digitalized the entire process. We have also something known as chatbot, which we have launched, and there is setup of technology transfer organization to promote R&D so as to support innovators and entrepreneurs. Okay, so this also, please go through it, covered specifically in economic survey. That is why we are covering it in detail. Okay, this can be directly asked. Fine. Okay, now that we have completed that topic also, now we come to the next topic, that is investment models. Okay, now when we talk about investment models, if you go through the PYQs, you will see investment models and infrastructure, they are correlated. Okay, the topic infrastructure, they are correlated. So investment models broadly, the questions that have been asked, PPP, right? With respect to railways, with respect to airport, with respect to infrastructure. Okay, what are the constraints that infrastructure has? And finally, what are the pros and cons of PPP model, right? So definitely you should have a static content for the same. Okay, why it is important? Because when we talk about this topic, okay, it is linked with infrastructure, and in infrastructure there are basically five subtopics, right? You have energy, you have port, you have road, railways, and one more is there, energy, port, road, railway, airport. Okay, so there are five subtopics. So whenever a question is asked on PPP, it can be linked to any one of them. Okay, but the content would remain the same. The static content would remain the same. The challenges of PPP model would remain the same, be it railways, be it airport, be it related to any infrastructure project. Okay, so that static content you should focus on. So this part of it is basically static. Okay, whereas this part of it is basically your current affairs related. So whenever FDI question has been asked, FDI in defense sector, FDI in multi-brand retail, they have been in news. Okay, so whenever some liberalization of FDI has happened, that year that topic is important. Okay, so now you have gone through the union budget. Tell me, if at all a question has to come from FDI, it will come related to which sector? Where have we seen liberalization of FDI? We have seen that in the case of insurance. Okay, so here, if you are focusing on the current affairs aspect of it, FDI, you should focus on the insurance sector. Okay, so that is what we have done. That is FDI in insurance sector. Its positive impact. Okay, so here currently we have observed yes, the limit has been raised from 74 to 100%, and there is an IRDA vision also of 2047, that is we need to provide insurance for all by 2047. Okay, now the positive impact of FDI inflow and the negative impact will be the same. Will be the static content will be the same. Okay, even if the sector changes, right? So when we talk about insurance sector, positive impact would be what? Increased foreign capital flow would be there, right? Yes, limiting you could have. Okay, you tell me. Okay, you only tell me what would be the positive benefits of having FDI, increased FDI limit in insurance sector. We'll discuss and then we'll go through the content. Okay, that way it would be much better. Tech transfer can happen. Yes, definitely. Increased market competition will happen. Very good. Security, more insurance penetration can happen. Yes. Okay. Startups, not exactly. We'll have to explain. Trade competitiveness could increase. Yes. Okay. Similarly, now tell me what would be the negative impact? Reduces out of pocket expenditure. Yeah, can happen. Yes. X to global market, global capital can happen. Yes. Now, what would be the negative impact? Tell me. What would be the negative impact associated with more vulnerable to external risk? Yes, definitely. Exposure to global markets could be there. Yes. What else? Policy transmission, if premium not invested in India. Cap flight, very good point. Yes, that can happen. This through traditional manufacture, exchange rate volatility. Okay, global crisis could be there. Okay, so broadly, I think you have covered most of the points. Okay, so again, you can mention all of these points. Okay, that is increased foreign capital inflow could be there. Okay, insurance penetration may increase. So currently our insurance penetration is nearly 3%, right? So it can increase further, right? Increased, we have, there could be improved competitiveness. Boost to health and life insurance segment could be there. Job creation may happen. Yeah, product innovation, that is a very good point. That is, it may encourage product innovation and customer centric services more. Okay, that may happen, right? Now, negative impact also the same way. Reduced domestic strategic control could be there. Profit capital might go back to the home countries. Okay, so profit risk could be there here. Marginalization of Indian players can happen. Regulatory burden may increase. Exactly. Okay. Policy protection risk might be there. That is, there could be large conglomerates who are directly going against or who are not acting in interest or who are going against this rural population. That could be there. Okay. And capital outflows may also happen during global crisis, right? During COVID, for example, pandemic, these large conglomerates may take the money to service the insurance in their home countries. Okay, so these are major positive and negative impacts. Accordingly, you can go through it. So if at all a question is asked on FDI, this is broadly the topic that we think it may come. Okay, but what is much more important, which we think can come, is this one. Okay, this one is important. That is bilateral investment treaties. Okay, this is very, very important for the students who are writing mains this year. This also why we are covering it, because specifically mentioned in union budget. Okay, that is, the finance minister has mentioned that the model BIT we are now trying to change. After 2015, we are now trying to update so as to make it much more investor friendly. Okay, so how do we expect such a question to be asked? So first is BIT. Okay, what is BIT? Finally, how does it differentiate or how is it different from FTA? Okay, that is free trade agreement. Okay, and finally, when you're talking about BIT, what should India keep in mind while it is updating its BIT? Okay, so this is the major broad parameter that we are expecting a question from this area. Okay, so bilateral investment treaty, basically it is a model treaty which the government self-imposes on itself. Okay, so as to provide an assurance to foreign investors. Yes, that is, you're investing in our economy and your investment will be basically protected. Okay, so that is bilateral investment treaty. Okay, so it is basically a tool so as to provide assurance to foreign investors against any such action that they may take, that the government may take, which will impact their investment. So they are legally enforceable. Okay, so last time it was in 2015 that we came up with our model BIT. Okay, so it basically provides right to investors so as to bring a claim against the host state. Okay, now how is it different from your free trade agreement? Okay, so when we talk about bilateral investment treaty, it is to promote investment between two countries. Okay, but whereas when we talk about FTA, we are talking about much more liberalization with respect to trade. Okay, now when we talk about BIT, we are talking about investment protection, and here free trade, again we are talking about trade itself. Okay, now when we talk about the mechanism involved, here it is investor settlement. Okay, investor state settlement, dispute settlement mechanism. So here we have a different mechanism altogether. That is, if at all an investor feels that some action has been taken by the local government which is threatening its investment, they can take them to court. Okay, ISDC. not to the local courts, but ISDS mechanism. Okay. So here it basically BIT, it limits states' regulatory autonomy over foreign investors. Okay. Whereas when we talk about the free trade agreement, we are talking about what? Tariff policy, trade regulation, all of it. Okay. Now here there is international arbitration, whereas here it is WTO. Okay, so there is specific differences here, whereas the finance minister has specifically mentioned about the differences between BIT and FTA. Okay, so it's a evolving topic. Definitely, you should focus on this topic. Okay, now when we talk about bilateral investment treaty, what is the way forward? Okay, so here I found an article where it mentions the first point that has been mentioned is in 2014 and 2015, when we had the BIT, we are basically a capital importing country. Okay, so what do we mean by capital importing country? We are basically importing technology and funds from US, UK, all of it. Okay, so for that, at that point of time, our we were much more on of defensive BIT. That is, we wanted to ensure that our local industries are much more protected. The investments that are coming from abroad, okay, our limits were we were highly limited there. Okay, but now what has changed is now we are a capital exporting country also, especially in Africa, South Asia, and all. So now when we bring about a BIT, we should also protect our investors' fund abroad. Okay, so that is the difference here. So it is saying, why is it that we should focus only on a single BIT? Why can't we have two different BITs with different countries? Okay, so one with a capital importing country, okay, and one with capital exporting country where we are protecting our investments abroad. Okay, so there is a need to rethink the need for a single model text. Okay, so that's the first. Second is you need to clearly balance investor protection and regulatory sovereignty. Now, what has happened in earlier BITs is there was lack of clear-cut definitions, because of which investors took the government to the courts. Okay, so now when we are giving our model BITs, we should clearly define what are the privileges that the investor can have access to. Okay, and at the same time, we should also provide the necessary safeguards for public interest. Okay, so this clear definition aspect was lacking, which we should inculcate in our model BIT now. Okay, now the third one is we also need to rethink the most favored nation clause, MFN clause. Okay, so because of this MFN clause, investors have taken the Indian government to court because we have provided certain provisions to some countries but not for others. Okay, so the way forward may be to rethink this clause. Okay, we could have consultative MFN where we ensure that only after mutual consultation we provide MFN treatment, or we provide forward-looking MFN also. That is, apply this most favored nation clause only to future treaties, not for the past ones. Okay, so three major points that you should remember, that is India should remember while focusing on this BIT, that is bilateral investment treaty. First is rethink the need for a single model text. Okay, dual BITs we can have. The second one is balance investor protection and regulatory sovereignty. So provide specific clear definitions also. Okay, the third one is rethink most favored nation clause. Okay, only give this clause to those with which we have had consultative discussions. Okay, now the fourth one is flexibility in design and customization. That is, with respect to each and individual states, we can have separate BITs here. Okay, especially for example, if we have some strategic interest. So example I've given, that is in case of UAE, we may expect funds from abroad where investments can happen in India. So for them, we may have a favorable BIT. Okay, so that could be there, that could be customized according to the country at hand. Okay, and finally, incorporate global best practices. Okay, so here the best practices of Brazil, that is Brazil Cooperation and Facilitation Investment Agreement. So here what happens is in Brazil, this because of the conflict between the investor and the state, they cannot directly go to the court. Okay, that provision itself is not there. The dispute is actually addressed through consultation. Okay, so a joint committee sets up so as to avoid costly litigation. Okay, so first the consultation happens at the government level, then only the court aspect is there. So this is a best practice that you can write in your answer. Okay, similarly for European Union also there is something known as investment court system, where a permanent tribunal system is already there, which works round the clock so as to ensure investors' interests are protected. Okay, so both are best practices. One talks about consultation before going to the courts, the other one talks about round the clock the court performs in a permanent fashion so as to ensure investor interest is protected. Okay, so these are five major aspects that you should keep in mind while preparing a BIT. Fine. Now, finally, what is the conclusion? The conclusion is India has to create a model BIT which effectively balances this investment with the state's right to regulate. Okay, so this balance has to be found out, then only you need to perform, right? So I hope this is very clear. Okay, so when we talk about bilateral investment treaty, what is bilateral investment treaty? It is basically a model text which has been prepared with the intent to protect investors' interest. Okay? That the government will not take any such action which will threaten its investment. Fine. Now, how is it different from FTA? Yes, here government self-imposes. When we talk about free trade, as the name suggests, it is trade. It is related to ensuring liberalization of trade there. Okay. When we talk about the settlement, the dispute issue in BIT, we have basically international arbitration. Okay. Whereas when we talk about FTA, we have WTO looking after the same, right? Exactly. Okay. So here there is self-imposement is there. Okay. Exactly. Okay. And there it is regulation. Now, what should India do here? What should be the broad parameters that India should keep in mind? Okay. Rethink single BIT exactly. That is a separate BIT for capital importing country and capital exporting country. Okay. So different here. Right. Second is balance investor protection. Yes. With sovereignty. Right. So how would you do the same? You will ensure there are all the basic rights, everything is explicitly mentioned. Even the definition is explicitly mentioned. Okay. The third one is flexibility in design. Yes, on an individual basis, that can happen with specific countries. Exactly. Okay. And there may be a reciprocity clause also, which can happen. And rethink MFN also. Exactly. Most favored nation clause. Okay. Only for those countries where consultation has already happened. Okay. And finally, global best practices. So Brazil is there where directly consultation happens first. Okay. And Europe is there where there is permanent tribunal structure is there. Okay. So these are broad things. Please go through this. This one I think is very, very important from your main standpoint. Bilateral investment treaty. Fine. So if this is clear, Okay, now we come to the, so we have done FDI, we have done BIT, now PPP. Now, what did we discuss on PPP? It's a static content. Okay, it's a static content. No matter what topic of infrastructure comes, you will write the same points, right? So when we talk about PPP here, what are the challenges that you will mention with respect to the PPP model? So PPP is basically a collaboration between government and private sector. So what are the challenges, basic challenges associated with the PPP model? Now the question can be related to railways, airport, energy. Okay. In all of it, the points would be the same, right? Regulation could be there. Yes. That could be a major challenge. What else? Conflict commercialization could be there. Very good. Ineffective risk sharing could be there. Very good. Conflict in high regulation, supervision, red tapeism could be there. Yes. Public perception could be there. Yes. Or no, right. Okay. Now, how would you address this PPP? How would you address the challenges that are associated with this? What would be the way forward? Stakeholder involvement could be there. Yes. What else? Dispute mechanism could be there. No, no, no. We are talking about way forward. Deregulation could be there. Inclusion of sectors. Yes. Plug and pay model could be there. Yes. That is possible. Prudent risk sharing. Very good. Good point. Yes. Definitely. Okay. Digitalization. Yes. Fine. So there are two, three points that you are missing, which should be there in your PPP model. Okay. Whenever a question is asked on PPP. So let's see what those points are. Okay. Yes. So major challenges we know. First is regulatory hurdles, as you have mentioned. Safety and security concern could be an issue. Public perception could be there. Yeah, pure transactional approach of the both the parties, right? That is government trying to ensure it gets the project done at the least cost. Okay, the private player trying to maximize the return. Okay, so here pure transactional approach could be there. Land acquisition risk. Now, this one is a unique point that you should mention. It may be associated with the private player. Okay, time and cost overruns could be there. Okay, rent seeking attitude could be there of the private players. Delay due to regulatory approvals. Okay, and inadequately developed Indian capital market could be there. Okay, so these are all challenges, broad challenges that are associated with the PPP model. Okay, now when you talk about how to improve the PPP model, you should always talk about what? Three major issues, three major aspects. One is the regulatory framework. A stable regulatory framework should be there to protect investors. Okay. The second should be a dispute resolution mechanism has to be there, and a efficient oversight and dispute resolution mechanism. Okay. And the third one is an effective public sector capacity should be also be there. Okay. Which can clearly monitor this PPP model. Okay. So not just focusing on the private player, but also on the public sector. They should be able to manage and monitor the effective implementation of this PPP model. Okay, so these 3 points definitely you should write. Okay, a clear and stable regulatory framework, dispute resolution mechanism, and an effective public sector capacity. Okay, now what should be the way forward? So here you can use examples, you can use Committees, you can take committees help also, right? So Vijay Kelkar committee is there, which talks about distinguishing between genuine errors in decision making and acts of corruption. Okay, so you can overhaul the culture and attitude of government entities. You can overhaul the PPP ecosystem altogether. That is governance reform, institutional redesign, all of it. Okay, now what is important here is provide for mid-course recorrect corrections. Right, if the project is not happening or there is costly overruns, you should be able to correct the same time. Okay, that's a major aspect that you should focus on. Okay, sector specific institutional frameworks with independent regulators and dispute resolution mechanism should be there. Okay, so these are certain way forwards that you can broadly write in your answers with respect to PPP model. Okay, so you can go through this. Okay, we are not expecting a question on PPP, but if it does come, you can write broad points from these three slides. Fine. Okay, if this is clear, now we come to the next topic, that is infrastructure. Okay, now in infrastructure, as I mentioned earlier, we have five subtopics, that is energy, port, roads, airports, and railways. Out of which, what you should focus on is energy. Based on past year PYQs, the question that has been repeatedly asked is what? Energy, road, and airports, right? Railways, if it has been asked, it is PPP. Okay, it has been asked with respect to PPP model. Okay, ports, never, it has not been asked. Okay, so we need to focus on energy, roads, and airport. Okay, now if you see the 2024 paper, the question was asked on Udan scheme, that is airports covered. Okay, similarly, if you see here, the question asked on 2024 is technology being employed for electronic toll collection on highways. Again, that is roads also covered. Okay, so it is highly unlikely that we will see topics from road and airports this year. I mean, in 2025 paper. Okay, that means we need to focus on the energy topic more. No, no, it is not focused on one port. We are focusing on broad topics. Okay, so whenever that is there, very broad topic. Okay, so what till date, the questions that has been there, it is energy. Okay, so we'll focus on the energy. If at all any broad scheme of port is there, definitely you can focus on that. Okay, so till date, in the last decade, a question has not been asked. So there may be a reason that such a question can be asked. That also is a possibility. Okay, but if you see the questions here, they are all asked from energy only. Okay, and there also, when we talk about energy, it is renewable energy. That is India's transition to renewable energy. Okay, so see here, 2022, the question asked is, how will India meet 50% of its energy demands from renewable energy? Okay, access to affordable, sustainable energy. Again, what is the current status of renewable energy? Okay, tariff. What is the cost of reduction of tariffs of solar energy? Again, renewable energy. Okay, and green energy corridor and nuclear energy program. Okay, so here broadly from this topic, most of the questions that have been asked till date, they have been from energy. Okay, so that is what we will focus on. Okay, and do you uh, do you remember any specific theme from these topics here, which you have seen in the union budget? We have gone through the union budget. Exactly. Okay, so that is nuclear. Okay, so this is the topic that we will prepare again. Okay, so here exactly which theme are we covering? We are covering nuclear energy mission for Viksit Bharat. Okay, separately, this has been covered extensively in PIB. So we are covering. Okay, so again, this all the content that we have taken from the slides, they are from PIB, directly from PIB. Okay, So here, when we talk about the nuclear energy mission, in the union budget, the government has mentioned about the aim of this mission is to achieve 100 gigawatt of nuclear power, okay, by 2047. So that is the target here. So from 2014 to 2025, we have basically doubled our installed nuclear capacity. Okay, and the government's plan is to increase it further to 22,000. Okay, so when you will draw it in the exam from 8,000, yeah, so increase it further to 22,000, right, by 2030, 31, 32. Okay, so that's the target under nuclear energy mission, right? Now here, how is the government planning to achieve the same? So there are certain government measures that they are talking about. First is to amend the Atomic Energy Act, okay, and civil liability so as to encourage private sector participation here. Okay. The second one is, as one of the students mentioned, small modular reactors and Bharat small reactors. Okay. So the government is planning to enter into private participation with private sector. Okay. Partnerships with private sector to set up Bharat small reactors and to research and develop in Bharat small modular reactors. Okay, so in that capacity, it has ensured that there are certain institutions which are developing small modular reactors for repurposing coal-based power plants. Okay, similarly, Department of Atomic Energy is trying to introduce gas-based reactors here, nuclear reactors. Okay, so here broadly, 2, 3 points here. First, amendment to Atomic Energy Act. The second one is entering into private sector partnership with the private sector on Bharat Small Reactor, Bharat Small Modular Reactor. Okay, now two institutions who are focusing on small modular reactors. Now, when we talk about Bharat Small Reactors, we are talking about 220 megawatt pressurized heavy water reactors. Okay, and we are trying to basically use them in carbon intensive sectors, that is steel, aluminium, these sectors, serving as captive power plants to aid in decarbonization. Okay, so Bharat small reactors, they are 220 megawatt pressurized heavy water reactor. Okay, now when we talk about Bharat small modular reactor, it is basically advanced nuclear reactors with power generation capacity up to 300 megawatts. Okay, so here the union budget has specifically mentioned about developing at least 5 of them by 2033. Okay, so these are government measures which are being taken. Right, now, what are the type of reactors? This you can directly draw also in your answer. That is micro reactors, small modular reactors, and full size reactors. Right, now, why is it the government is planning for small modular reactors? You have read this in prelims. What is the reason, or what is the significance of small modular reactors? Why is it that the government is promoting the same? Because sometimes a direct question can also be asked. Okay, what is a small modular reactor? Why is the government promoting it in union budget, right? That also can happen. Yeah, easier to build, portable, cost to productivity fine. What else? Remote areas, yes, they can be easily repaired. Okay. Okay, so you're right. These are good points that you have mentioned. Okay, so that is the exact point. So when we talk about significance here, yeah, the compact structure here and the passive safety, that is, they are not actively involved here. Okay, so the passive safety that is there, that is a major point here. Okay, so here example you can clearly mention US based. Okay, US based new scale SMR design here. It includes passive cooling system here. Okay, so these examples I have mentioned so that your answer would be a bit different from others. Okay, so others will also write about flexibility in application would be there. Okay, so here you can mention example is South Korea's SMART. This is also an SMR, small modular reactor, which generates electricity up to 100 megawatt. Okay, factory fabrication may be there. Okay, even potential for underground location, underwater or underground location. Okay, so here there is another example, that is Russia's SMR is there, which can operate in remote Arctic regions. So it is away from natural or man-made hazards. Then there is scalability is there, portability is there. Okay, so these are major uh, reasons why we are going for small modular reactor. Okay, now finally the way forward here. So there should be a universal regulatory framework for them. Safety should not be compromised. You have to engage with the public so as to, for any concern, you have to address their concern. Develop a comprehensive safety assessment methodology. Okay, governments, if it wants to increase small modular reactor and increase private sector participation, it should sign power purchase agreements with them. Okay, or it can also have a cost sharing mechanism to minimize construction risk. Okay, so that also is a unique point that you can mention. Now, there could be a project specific techno economic assessment, right? That is, the economics of it can be discussed. Okay, and there is access to low cost innovative financing framework could be there. That is, incorporating nuclear energy into green taxonomy so that they can tap into global funds. Okay, so these are certain ways in which you can ensure there is faster promotion of small modular reactors. Okay, so please go through this also. Again, we are covering nuclear energy only because of this. Okay, the static content of the energy part that is there, sustainable energy, that I will give you as um, the daily answer writing practice. Okay, so that you can write that question. Please, you should write those questions. Okay, every after class we are giving 4 questions, right? We are giving you those 4 questions with that premise itself, that the static content of it, which we could not cover in the class, that if you write in your mains answers, right, you will cover those portions also, right? So here there is a static content of energy also, that is India's transition to renewable energy, that I'll give you in the questions. Okay, so we have covered nuclear energy, go through it. What is government's measures that they have taken? And specifically, if the question is asked on small modular reactor, then also you should be able to answer. Fine. All right, so with that, I end the class for today. Okay. Now, if you have any doubt, you can stay back, you can ask. The rest of you can leave. The class for today is over. The next class for you will be on Friday. Okay, the next class will be on Friday. So any doubt, anyone?